A Dakota State University student getting a dream opportunity when he graduates. Eric Thorstensen introduces us to Connor Starrett, this week's Someone You Should Know.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff.
Like many kids, Connor Starrett
IM-1 and the Odysseus lunar lander
was fascinated by space.
Vehicle pitching downrange.
Connor grew up in a military family.
Propulsion is nominal.
One of the first Christmas gifts I can remember receiving when I was a kid, I want to say I was about 5 or 6 years old. My parents had bought me a telescope for Christmas, and I used that thing all the time. It was seeing what planets can we see from space, or from our porch today.
With both parents in the Air Force.
We lived around a lot of military communities, and so being in those types of communities, you really get an appreciation for the service that people bring.
He joined the Air Force ROTC in high school in North Carolina. He eventually decided to go to college at Dakota State with its great cybersecurity program.
I packed everything I owned into my Jeep and drove 1,500 miles across the country and moved out here.
Connor will graduate in May with a double major in computer science and cyber operations, and then he'll have a big opportunity. He recently found out he's been accepted into the Space Force.
The Space Force was founded in 2019 with the mission of figuring out how we're going to keep the space domain uncontested, allow free travel through space.
It wasn't easy getting into the newest military branch.
From my knowledge, I think 125 cadets across the country were picked up to join the Space Force. It's definitely a selective thing to be in. We're the smallest branch with about 8,600 active duty personnel.
There are a number of areas Connor could go into with all of the future possibilities in space.
So I don't know which area I'm going to go into yet. We find out after we go through tech school, but I am hoping for space electronic warfare. Obviously, having a background in cybersecurity, that's kind of the coolest thing, the thing that kind of draws me to it. Space is just so vast, and it allows you to ponder a lot of questions. And yeah, I'd love to be part of finding those answers.
In Madison, Eric Thorstensen, Dakota News Now.
After graduating from DSU, Connor is heading to California to begin his training in the Space Force. As always, if there's something you think we should all know, please email a nomination to news@dakotanewsnow.com.